Uncuckables.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncuckables. It's Easter Thursday. I'm Tim Wilms, Editor-in-Chief of the Unshackled, and I'm here with David Hiscox, Editor of XYZ.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Have you stopped beating your wife?
Well, apparently we're the Unfuckables, so no, I don't have a wife to beat. And we, of course, have James Fox Higgins of the Rational Rise, who does have a wife, a lovely wife who I've met.
Have you stopped beating her, James?
Never started, mate. not once, not ever.
What's that? Are you challenging the premise of the question, are you?
I won't fall into that trap. Yeah, good to be here.
You could run for Fraser. Yeah.
Now, the reason you raised that, David, because there's been a lot of nothing stories lately.
Yeah.
You say that as an editor, like if you looked at a lot of stories lately, you'd say there's nothing there. The expression is nothing burger. Do you want to explain why you raised that?
Well, yeah. On Monday night, Maddie and I were talking about an article, it was a beat up in the Australian, about how the instructions given to potential candidates for the Fraser Anning Conservative National Party, they were instructed on how to deal with the media. And so they were instructed, if somebody gives you a question where whichever way you answer it, it's going to be a bad answer, challenge the premise of the question. For example, if someone was to ask you, have you stopped beating your wife? Obviously you're going to challenge the premise of the question. So the Australian did an article saying, basically saying, oh, they're talking about beating your wife. It's like, no. So as an editor, if a journalist brought me a story like that, I would read it and go, this isn't a question. This isn't a story. Take it back and, get your head checked. And so
it just shows you they don't understand the premise of the question, which means they're completely stupid, or they do, and they're deliberately ignoring it to deceive the public.
Yes,
which makes them just as dangerous.
Yes.
So
well,
it just reflects on them, and they should just keep going with this stuff.
That's
they
right.
Really should.
And last week we were talking about exactly the same sort of thing, where there was the article about Fraser Anning in the Australian, asking him, like, sort of saying that he draft dodged. When in fact he had actually signed up for the army. He did actually serve in the army. He was just in a unit that didn't go overseas, but he wanted to go overseas. So again, as an editor, I'm like, no, that's not a story. Take it back.
They don't care though. ABC and the rest, they'll just push them through because it's the agenda that matters. It's actually not any integrity of any particular article that matters to them. It's the bigger agenda and the way all of these little shitty articles that haven't been properly researched add up to a propaganda, tsunami that people who are NPCs will just follow. They'll just take the download and they'll follow that as the truth, and they'll just keep repeating the talking points. So it still has an incredible power, even though we know it's got no journalistic veracity at all.
That's it. And I've got to say, like, I am kind of setting things up because there's a part of me which is hoping that the mainstream media will watch the first 30 seconds of this of this live stream and go, oh, they're making domestic violence jokes, and then take it from there, because that's kind of talking about what I was talking today in my article.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I just saw a couple of hours ago when I was scrolling through my Facebook feed that apparently Australia has been deemed the safest place in the world for women. So there you go. We're supposedly in the grips of a domestic violence epidemic. We've been judged the safest for women.
For now.
Well, that's is that legit, or is that who's judging that?
It was, I didn't look at the article itself, but Business Insider, they had the headline.
Yeah, I wonder on what metric and what statistics they base that. Because
I saw it on...
That's really great. That's what we want, right?
I saw it on Bettina Arndt's feed, so I remember now. So I assume if she shared it, then she obviously believes that it's credible.
Yeah.
But isn't Bettina Arndt a Nazi?
Yeah, she's a far-right rape apologist.
Yes, that's it. She's a misogynist. She's a self-hating woman. Yeah.
She's internalized her misogyny.
Yeah.
Now, another story that broke today was the journalist in Australia who has the biggest thing for people like us, Alex Mann of the ABC, or as you call him, David.
Mannlet.
Alex Mannlet.
I think Maddie's Modern Life gave him that moniker, actually. Yeah.
It writes itself.
Yeah. Apparently, I actually heard that Maddie, he actually gave Captain Pisshead, he actually gave him like a 1 month episode of asthma, and he hasn't been able to leave his house. Like he looks out the window, and everywhere he just sees Maddie, and like that's why he hasn't posted about us for a while. Yeah.
Now you guys roll around with the trolls a lot more than I do. I just ignore them.
Oh yeah, it's a bit of light relief from the rough and tumble. Otherwise, you become too black-pilled.
Yeah, that's certainly true. It's nice to have a good scuffle now and then to sort things out. Online, in writing, in words, not promoting violence.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the background to Alex Mann is that he works for the ABC Radio National's background briefing, and he had this big story last year where he exposed that members of the Nationalist Lad Society in Sydney had joined the New South Wales Young Nationals, and he teamed up with the White Rose Society, which is this anti-fascist, anti-Nazi doxing website, and who'd written a profile on all these young lads, and this set up a chain of events that got reported in other mainstream media and led to the National Party banning 22 members for life for being a member of the lads and other nationalist groups such as the New Guard. And so Alex Mann, ever since, he's been trying to, I describe him as a one-hit wonder. He's had this big story and he's been trying to ride it ever since. He's obviously got a large following from this story, and is trying to impress them further. I'm not sure if he's
repeat it at the key moments.
Yeah.
When
like
it
he had
some traction again.
He recycled his story. It's called Haircuts and Hate, after the Christchurch one, where he'd apparently unveiled.
If that's not clickbait, I don't know what is. Oh my god! If I saw that headline, I'd be like, I like this guy.
He'd apparently unveiled comments from the Christchurch killer Brenton Tarrant on the now deleted United Patriots Front Facebook page.
Oh, you mean those comments that like they couldn't actually show and they never actually saw, but they had the metadata, so they're pretty sure it was.
Yeah, he called Blair Cottrell Emperor Blair, and called Neil Erickson and Sherman Burgess useful idiots, and this was used in a Four Corners report, which was another nothing burger by Sean Rubenstein Dunlop.
That report will now become something that gets cited by alternative media folks on the left, and they just create this trail of bullshit articles and publications and videos that people can then cite, and the NPCs will just eat it right up and go, well, there's citations linked. I didn't click them and follow the rabbit hole, but they'll take what they're given. And this article by Mannlet, it employs regularly that very common propagandistic tactic of just find the worst individuals who are in the vicinity and then tell us a little story about them. So it refers to one of the like a neo-Nazi club, and then it highlights two individuals that otherwise seem to have absolutely nothing to do with the person who this report's actually on, but point out that one of them was a murderer and another one had criminal charges of some kind, and then put them in the same paragraph with the guy that they're doing a hit piece on, and voila, he's now in league with murderers. But it's such a strained link between these facts, but they don't care. This is just one of the tools they use to poison the well.
So let's have a look at Mannlet's piece. Since we're all calling him Mannlet, let's just stick with that. I wonder if he's watching. I wonder what he thinks of the nickname.
I think it'll stick.
Alt-right to release avalanche of election campaign propaganda to help Fraser Anning. So it's not election advertising, election promotion, it's propaganda, which sort of, it implies, using the word propaganda, it's meant to allude to the Nazi propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, in my opinion. That's what I sort of judge that headline to be. So
I like the fact that they're still using the term alt-right. Yeah, you're saying, James?
Wow. Well, it's calling it propaganda is just another way of it's the same tactic as them saying you're a white supremacist, right? It's not true, and it's well, actually no. A better analogy is when they call you racist, right? The folks on the left and the leftist media, when they call you racist, they're actually projecting what they are onto you, especially against white folks with this narrative. It's really not okay to be white. Is being clearly shouted out by the leftist media. So they're a bunch of anti-white racists, and they call us racists for talking about anything related to genetics or history or reordering of things in any manner. But what it does is it puts you in another category. So calling what the alt-right, the so-called alt-right, and what Fraser Anning's people and what the right wing like us do in talking about the issues and spreading information and sometimes spreading dank memes, right, to convey the message. Yeah. This all gets lumped into propaganda because it's the enemy. It's the ones we don't want to win. But we're news. We on the left, we're news. We're journalists. And it's bullshit. All of it's propaganda, especially at election time. Everything is propaganda. But is the propaganda truthful? Propaganda is just taking the wealth of information that's available and funneling it into what's going to work, what's going to actually convey the message to the people to get their support. And we all do it at this time in the political cycle. We all do it. We're choosing the information that we think is most important, but is the information that we're presenting truthful? That's the only question that matters.
Well, we'll keep going in there, the article. We won't go through it all.
That's just the headline.
Yeah. Okay. If I just
look at
just go up, yeah. So, leaked messages have revealed the Australian alt-right's secret plan to use Queensland Senator Fraser Anning to expand its extreme agenda in the Australian Parliament and beyond. The text seen by background briefing, they get a lot of access to lots of secret messages and comments and lots of things, offer a rare insight into the strategy the movement intends to use to further its goals and spread its ideology.
Can I stop you for a moment? So I know I like to analyze line by lines, but we won't won't go through too much. But like the text seen by background briefing, so they're not actually showing the texts. So
they've got a fake phone.
Yeah,
below.
They've actually got a fake phone with some of their key points on the phone, but they don't actually have. They're not actually providing the proof that they've seen it.
Yeah.
So just as with the piece about the metadata, we're supposed to trust them. So they don't actually provide proof of the entire story. The entire story is based on these texts, but they're not actually providing the proof. Yeah.
Like when I read the texts there that are put onto that image, I read through it. It's like, well, obtaining access to giant email and SMS database like Clive did, but sending messages that are extremely right wing. Yeah, sure. Well, the others, the extreme left wing folks in the Greens and Labor parties do that. So, of course, the right wing will do that too. The second one, stunts involving blackface and other taboos, doing videos that cause controversy, burning UN, Antifa and ISIS flags. I'm cool with the burning of those flags for sure. Possibly the Quran as well. So they're talking about doing non-violent, hypothetically, ideally non-criminal acts of political stunts to get publicity.
It would actually be kind of cool just to troll them and actually do all of those things now.
Yeah, but like, why shouldn't people do those things? You may think it's tacky, or you may think it's outside of the gentlemanly spirit of the parliamentary race. But people are going to do that stuff, and the important question here is: are we free to do that stuff? And we all know we're not anymore in Australia. That's why those things actually probably need to occur a lot to resist the fact that we're not free to speak freely in this country in that way anymore. We're not allowed to ridicule or criticize Islam or the tenets of communism. There's no freedom of speech.
You could burn a UN flag and say, "Hey, look, I'm racist against everybody."
or the truth is, burn a UN flag and say this is this organization is one of the leaders in the destruction of true diversity.
Yes. Burn a UN flag and then put up a rainbow flag.
I am pro-diversity, so I burn the UN flag. You know, and is it a crime in Australia to burn a UN flag? I would.
Well, it's not even a crime to burn an Australian flag. You can still burn it.
Not.
I remember this was a decade ago. The Socialist Alternative were selling for $5 burn an Australian flag kit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yep. Is it illegal to burn an Aboriginal flag? Is it actually technically
would
illegal?
that be 18C?
Is it on the law books?
Well, this is the thing: is this 18C law now about the racial vilification, racial and religious vilification laws that are starting to grow in the West? These are the tools that they use to make these things illegal. Like, it may technically not be illegal to burn an Aboriginal flag, but it will be. I mean, it will be seen as hate speech by most people, and most people will think a line has been crossed. And then those who want to expand the power of that law will use it to essentially ban you from burning any flag of the in-group.
Well, we'll keep going on the... Where did we get up to?
Yeah, keep it going.
All right, so we've already talked about the stunts.
Next bit.
Another stated goal is obtaining and accessing a giant email and SMS database in order to send messages that are extremely right-wing.
Right-wing!
Well, that's basically what all political parties do. They send out emails and mass text messages. What's Clive Palmer been doing lately?
Well, and then we try to reply with rather crude manners, and it just says you cannot reply to this text as well. Yeah. I think straight after that it goes into all the attempted doxing. What I find really interesting about those opening few lines is that they're basically talking about, they're summing up the way that we on the alternative right, on the new right, on the nationalist right, the way that we get attention, and the way that we were actually able to spread our message. Because I like to push the meme, don't mention the XYZ, and it counts for all of us. It counts for Unshackled, counts for you, James. It counts for everybody. The left are always, and the globalist media are always pushing the narrative of we've got to move to the center. You have to move to the political center. Political parties have to move to the center, otherwise they're not going to be electorally viable. And it's a complete myth, because to them the centre is a little bit to the left of the Labor Party, and they're using it as a con to try to push the Liberal Party to the left as well. The fact is, Middle Australia has not changed in the last 50 years. Middle Australia is still all the way over there on what is now deemed the far right. But I'm going to say it every single time.
Oh no, I love it. It's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should try to infiltrate the Pirate Party.
So how far though?
Far.
How far?
So yeah, they haven't changed, except that we just simply don't have a voice either in the media or in politics, aside from Fraser Anning and people like us in the alternative media. We're the people actually speaking for Middle Australia. So the thing about the globalist media is that there is a weakness to them. They are hardwired to clamp down on anybody who seems to do something extreme. And so they think that if they tell everybody about the supposed extreme thing that we did, that everybody will agree that we're horrible people. But the thing is, it's happening more and more. And we can see this with the shift in the Overton window. You can see it in the comment sections of all the mainstream media publications. Everyday Australians see what they are presenting as something extreme, and they're going, yeah, good on them. That's what I think.
That's fucking funny, mate.
Exactly. And so what all these guys are doing is saying, hey, look, let's just brainstorm publicity stunts that will trigger the NPC media into actually giving us some coverage.
Yeah.
And then all we've got to do is not apologize, not back down, and it'll just boost our image. It'll boost Fraser Anning's image. And that's how you win. That's how Donald Trump won.
Yeah. Yeah.
I initially proposed it for XYZ Live, but it could probably apply to this show as well, that it's a drinking game. Every time you hear the word far right on this program, you take a sip. And
No, it's got to be an entire shot.
a shot.
It's got to be an entire shot.
Well, your preference, either a
You wanna
sip
put
or a
people in the
shot.
emergency room.
Depending on how heavy drinker you are.
I'm in favor of drunk blogging.
Yeah. So if the comments get like a bit off the chart, then by the end of the show, then we know we've said a lot.
Yeah.
Now, this article goes on to name two associates of, I'm not sure if they're working or just helping out Senator Fraser Anning, Andrew Wilson and Radomir Corletti, and talks about their background in the nationalist movement.
What a name is Radomir. Sounds like, I reckon he might be a descendant of Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, it's sort of straight out of Game of Thrones, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you pointed this out in your article, that there's a photo of the pair of them with Morgan Munro, our senior producer here at the Unshackled, but it's what you're mentioning there. Don't mention the XYZ, don't mention the Unshackled.
That's it.
They say this is Andrew Wilson and Radomir in this photo, but who's this third person who...
no mention of him.
Yeah.
It's hilarious because just a little later on in the article, they refer to the burgeoning alt media scene in Australia. But they're not actually going to link to it. They're not going to point out, oh yeah, this guy's like part of the media, because they know that, just like Fraser Anning, like every time they attack us, they boost our audience and they amplify our message.
I remember when Alex Mannlet did his original background briefing story, he played a snippet of my interview with Blair Cottrell at the Lad Society Clubhouse, and said like, oh, this is Blair Cottrell speaking to the alt-right website, The Unshackled. And I was like, oh, you named us.
Do you consider yourself alt-right too?
No, but sort of like...
Alt-right is so 2016.
Yeah, and it's a vague term. Like, what does it mean? Like, it means different things to different people. Like, I don't let labels like trigger me. Like, I'm not like Ben Shapiro when he's labeled like alt-right. It's like, how dare you ring up like the editor and say, please, remove this. I am not alt-right. How dare you? I'm just like,
but
whatever.
it's just a game of conflation, and it's so dumb. All of these labels, right? They're these massive reductions of very, very complex sets of ideas. Right, I don't like to put myself into any of those baskets. I don't mind Uncuckable; that's a good label. But we need to be able to have a nuanced conversation with people. For it to be worth our time, we need to be engaged in nuanced conversations with people where we're not just going, "Oh, do you fit into the alt-right basket, or are you a neo-Nazi, or are you a Stalinist communist?" Or like, let's talk about specific ideas and break it down and actually have the conversation about what our views are. But that's what we try to do all the time. We try to talk about ideas, and then that same game of poisoning the well that they've done in the article there of, creating fake associations between people and other, horrible people who were involved in an organization that they were in, or between individual ideas that we have that certain undesirable other groups have. So then, just through that tiny little wormhole, you can link us together and put us all in that basket of deplorables. And it's absolutely childish. It's a really stupid game to engage with at all. So my answer to it now is just call me whatever you want. Like, call me whatever label works for you, and I'll go on having conversations with people who are interested in the ideas, not the labels.
That's really vital. What you're pointing out here is that, like, at no point in the article have they actually engaged any of our ideas, any of our arguments.
No, it's all you're in the Nazi club. You're in the Nazi club.
And
we're all in the Nazi club.
I was actually, as I often point out, I listen to ABC radio when I'm driving because know thy enemy. And they actually interviewed one of the authors. I can't remember his name, Swine or something. Whatever.
I'll bring it up now.
Yeah. Because he's actually he was
Benjamin
Swine.
Swine.
Yeah, we'll call him Benjamin Swine.
Or Swine?
Yeah, we'll call him Benjamin Swine.
Anglicize it.
Yeah, the ABC presented him as an expert on the far right. It might have been the alt right. He's apparently like at a university. Might even be a researcher. And so what was really he knows his stuff. What was really, really interesting, this guy gave like an absolute point by point rundown of essentially the aims of the entire broad grassroots conservative movement, nationalist movement, patriot movement, libertarian movement. He talked about how we're not necessarily after electoral success, although that is a possibility and that would be great. We're working at changing the culture. We're engaged in a cultural war, and the great thing about Fraser Anning now, and like guys like David Leyenhelm who've been there in the past as well, is that they provide us with resources and they amplify our message. And Fraser Anning is fantastic, where if he retains his seat, magnificent, but even if he doesn't, it's been an incredible chance these last 6 months or so to actually boost the nationalist message and mainstream our ideas. So this guy gave a point-by-point rundown of all of those points. So he understands us. He understands what we say. He understands exactly what we're about. But at no point did he ever actually try to engage any of our ideas.
Yeah, it's all about that. Well, you should already know that what these people believe is bad. That's that's their conclusion, that you should already know that far right, alt right ideas are bad, and so we're telling you that they're trying to gain influence. That's an outrage in itself.
Yes, yeah. It's the standard modus operandi of repeat what they say, assume everybody will agree with you that they're horrible, but accidentally amplify our message. Yeah.
Not only was it a nothing burger in that regard, but it was all recycled stuff from the White Rose Society and Slackbastard. I mean, White Rose Society wrote about this back in January. All it is just Alex Mannlet has slapped an ABC logo on that work.
Yeah, that's it.
Recycle. It's good for the environment.
Yeah, that's it. They didn't repeat the demand to for answers on whether money has been exchanged.
Oh yeah. We demand all these things, and my response was, "Who are you to demand anything?"
They pay us in memes.
That's the real currency of the world today.
To me, the big story is actually that Alex Mann has basically colluded with a terrorist organization, because he's basically got this information from Slackbastard. Slackbastard promotes and encourages violence for political reasons against conservatives. That's terrorism. Slackbastard is about as closely linked to Antifa as you can get. Antifa commit violence against conservatives for political reasons. So just like when the ABC attacked a defector from Antifa a couple of years ago, the ABC are essentially in collusion with a terrorist organization.
I know.
That's really well. That can't be amplified and repeated enough. I think that connection there, because unlike what they do in their articles, you've actually laid out what the connections are between the organizations and the flow of information and the people involved, what their affiliations are, and what they actually stand for and promote. And if we were really the bad guys in this story, they would have all of that in these articles every time. Yeah. They'd be listing every single thing they know about us that's truly abhorrent, but they just don't have it.
All we do is hurt people's feelings.
We crush people's feelings. It's necessary.
Slackbastard has been living up to his name lately. He has been quite slack. He deactivated his Facebook for a while. We suspect because the Unshackled surpassed him in likes on Facebook, even though he's been at it for 15 years. I do read his Twitter because it's pretty much old academic yells at cloud. He's like, there's all these fascists everywhere and nobody's paying attention to me. He occasionally brings me up when I wore the Pinochet Did Nothing Wrong shirt on the September 11
that t-shirt
show.
Was a cuck out. You should update it to be the Bolsonaro version. Pinochet should have killed more people.
Oh, well, Bolsonaro hasn't done much yet, but the reason why I wore it on that show is because I'd written an September 11 article rationalizing what Pinochet did during his time as president of Chile, and I encourage people to read it before you simply just read Slackbastard raging about the t-shirt. But yeah, he pretty much just, that summarized him. He's just raging all these alt-right people, fascists. They're taking over and nobody's paying attention to me, and like I'm getting no benefit from this. He's really.
Well, I think he's a bit upset after going to jail for terrorism charges last year as well. Yeah.
Yes.
He did he?
Yeah, he went to jail. According to Neil Erickson.
Neil Erickson and Ricky T. When he went dark for a few days, they released a video saying, "We've heard that he's been up on terrorism charges."
So it has to be true.
Well, they take down YouTube videos of Neil Erickson, so
so he must be right.
Yes, well, I'm pretty glad that he's returned to a state of slackness. That it's. I mean, I must admit, I've clicked on his website twice because it's come up, with some Google searches I've done for people in Australia who are part of the movement.
Oh, so he's helped you to network, yes?
So he's helped me to connect some dots about who's who. I wouldn't say network necessarily, but his recent article that outlines all of the different groups is a great one-stop shop for anyone in Australia who's curious about who's involved with the right and the alt-right and the various factions of the right. Who are the movers and shakers that are triggering people like Slackbastard into putting together a glossary that you can refer to for your convenience and make some connections.
It's really encouraging for me too, because there are so many people on there. There's so many.
And it's called
huge.
A Brief Guide to the Australian Far Right. Yeah. Well, if he was actually diligent bastard, like imagine what he'd put together.
Maybe we should start a GoFundMe campaign for Slackbastard, and we'll call it "Give Us the Full compendium." We want. Can you we'll raise $10,000 for you to just give us the white pages of the right pages. We'll call them the right pages.
Right pages.
Just give us a book and we'll distribute it.
There was also the Antifa Sydney website, that doxing website. That was good for information as well. I was pleased when the Unshackled, we all got profiles there, but then they switched it to private because the person who ran it, Daniel Trotter, got doxed himself and couldn't handle it, and so turned the site to private. So you have to be like approved Antifa to read doxing. So it's not really doxing then.
Yeah. Because they're all crazy.
So how do they determine if you're a genuine Antifa? Do they take a blood sample and check it for AIDS?
Yes.
Well, I remember Morgan Munro. He tried to go to a campaign against racism and fascism meeting at Trades Hall, and apparently he and his friends got all these questions like, what books do you read, where have you been active? There's sort of like when you join Facebook groups, there's all these questions. It's sort of like that.
So they really suss them out. That's very interesting.
Well, of course, all our right-wing neo-Nazi clubs that we're all members of have those too. It's like, get to the chopper. He's in.
Yeah,
that doesn't really happen, and there are no such clubs. I'll just I'll say that straight.
Yeah. Any new XYZ contributors, I asked them to basically recite the entire script of Murdoch's 13th episode, 14th episode.
Yeah, I remember. It was really funny. Outside the Fraser Anning meeting in Melbourne, Neil Erickson was denying access to all of the student journalists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like all the wannabe student journalists who wanted to come in, and he said, like, oh, if you want to come in, you've got to do the Roman salute, and if you write a bad article, I'll release it.
Yeah.
He wanted a ransom. I love it. Yeah, we just need to get some collateral here. Can you just put your hand up like this? And we go, got it.
Screenshot.
You can write whatever you want.
I'd say Neil only made one mistake, but maybe that like Egg Boy, there was all the publicity Fraser Anning needed actually. Yeah.
Anyway, we're done mocking our enemy's rage. Let's move on to it's been a pretty big international story. The fire that's ravaged the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, which was, we are told, an accident, case closed, nothing to see here.
Yeah, they just jumped to that conclusion. I think even before the fire had finished.
Yeah, it was an accident.
Well, there were also reports of there being fires, two fires in the building that converged. And obviously, if there's two, it's most certainly not an accident. But my opinion on it is it doesn't matter whether it's deliberate or not, and it doesn't matter if the culprits are ever caught or not. It's a symbol, and it's probably one of the most architecturally, it's as important a moment in our history as the falling of the two towers were in New York. It's a symbol of what is now successfully being destroyed, which is the Christian culture of France in particular. Obviously, that spreads out in a lot of ways, but in particular, France is dying and almost dead, and they're going to continue to attack its symbols in various ways. And this symbol is a very heartbreaking one. Not because of the building, just because of what it represents.
Yeah.
What you're pointing out there is essentially the motive for it to have been deliberate. Because...
it's certainly, the motive is definitely there.
Yeah.
This is in the context of like a number of church burnings across France and regular desecrations of churches in France. You've got to consider the history in Islamic warfare of destroying the conquered people's most important religious temples, or building over the top of the ruins, or converting those temples or churches into mosques. Like the Hagia Sophia and the Dome of the Rock are the two best, most obvious examples of that. So, what greater symbol can you get of burning the most important cathedral in France? You've got to consider that it's not long after the Christchurch incident as well. And I've been saying that the reason that Brenton Tarrant chose Muslims was because he knew that Muslims are likely to retaliate. Like you had Recep Tayyip Erdogan, threatening retribution.
They're cancelling Anzac Day services in New Zealand because of Islamic terrorism fears. Yeah.
So again, like if you consider motive, there's your motive right there. They wanted if somebody had a motive, they would want to do something really symbolic.
Just that it is a very powerful symbol. This happening, and as you say, it speaks to the motives of vengeance potentially, but there's also, it's worth considering the possibility that it's a false flag by another Tarrant-type accelerationist on the far right, who wants to continue to escalate the conflict between, white Western Christianity, essentially, and Middle Eastern and North African Islam. They're the core groups that are in conflict and in Europe, and that will continue to be in greater conflict. And, if somebody wanted to give this thing another big nudge, in a way where there's, it's going to be probably quite difficult for them to find whoever lit the fire, and they could have paid, a couple of Nigerian brothers to do it. Who knows? It serves the purpose of acceleration, whether it was a total accident, whether it was done by Muslims or whether it was done by Europeans. It doesn't matter. It serves the acceleration narrative, and we just need to be realistic that we're going to see more of this stuff happen, and it's going to get more and more frightening.
One more point while I have my tinfoil hat on. I've been to Notre Dame, and I was there a couple of years ago, and I was actually there late in the day, so I was there at closing time, because this happened after, like the fire started shortly after the closing time. It happened well after the workmen had gone home as well. I can tell you for a fact, it would have been very easy to sort of sneak off somewhere and stay behind once the place had been closed.
Yeah. Big hall, not a lot of security.
Yeah.
What people have noticed, well, what we've noticed in the aftermath is because everything's streamed online now, various press conferences, disasters, all of the ha-has from Arabic sounding names.
And also from our greatest allies.
Yeah. And there was also, this is what I do after every thing that the left that's like, oh, we're sad about the desecration of white history, yet nobody's sad about the desecration of black history in Australia and in other places. Like, there's always that false comparison.
Yep.
Yeah.
True that.
Yeah.
We'll go on to an election update now. Now, the election campaign is going to take a break for Easter or Passover, depending on which holiday you celebrate. We heard the result of the New South Wales election, well, the Upper House results, and what we were most interested in was the makeup of the new crossbench. So One Nation in New South Wales, which I call Mark Latham's One Nation, won 2 seats. Mark Latham got in and the second candidate got in. Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party got a candidate, and the Animal Justice Party got a seat. But David Lyneham of the Liberal Democrats missed out on his switch to state politics. Christian Democrats didn't win a seat for the first time in many elections, and Australian Conservatives, well, they got 0.6%. They completely bombed. And certainly the conclusion to draw from that result is that nationalism trumps mainstream conservatism, at least in the minor party sphere.
Yeah, that seems to be a fair call, and it speaks to why someone like Fraser Anning, who's being very forthrightly nationalistic, is exploding in popularity. Fraser Anning won't be the last of his kind of voice in the parliament, and so people are looking for those candidates who are starting to head that way. New candidates will pop up who are that way, and potentially even more bold and forthright, and we'll see the that trend away from traditional conservatism, I think, towards nationalism continue, I think, over the next few years.
And obviously David Lyneham, he was libertarian. He was in the Senate for 5 years. Libertarianism is a diverse community. He wasn't everyone's preferred libertarian. He was certainly my preferred libertarian, and gave it a fair go, promoting the cause of liberty, and now his political career is over.
Yeah, that was a slight disappointment to me, just because I had him high on my preferences, and as I said to you guys earlier, it was primarily because of his approach to gun control, and I thought it would be very useful to have his voice in the New South Wales legislature to try and ease the restrictions on guns a bit. But you were going to say something, Dave?
Oh yeah, I just love the way that he just stood up to Sarah Hanson-Young. He just stood to the facts. After the rape and murder of the female comedian, can't remember her name.
Eurydice Dixon.
Yeah. And he was making he was actually trying to put something through which would actually improve the safety of women, and he was accused of being sexist for that. It was ridiculous.
It was a fun sort of stepping stone into clown world.
Yeah.
To see all that unravel.
Yeah. There's still the court case, because Sarah Hanson-Young's taken legal action, which we're told what's going to be brought up in court is her private life, which is I'll leave it there.
So here's the only question I think the judge needs to ask is
Sarah Hanson-Young really a whore?
Well, no, it's you said he was slut shaming you. Are you saying that you're a slut?
or are you saying that it's because Lyneham actually wasn't saying that like it's bad, like this whole thing slut shaming, like it's only if you think being slut's bad.
It's only if A, you're a slut, and B, you're ashamed of it, which obviously Sarah Hanson is in both cases. It's like, it's not a problem if it's true, sure, you sleep around, and if you don't worry about it, then how could that possibly hurt you? But again, she's just another puppet of this propagandist, world of people who are, always just looking for a way to paint their crossbenchers, paint the people on the other side of the political spectrum as evil, hateful, Nazi, going to kill us all, make us into subhuman demons. And that's, if you can do that, then you win and you control the narrative. That's all they're ever trying to do. She's not personally wounded by it.
She's up for election this time. 3 or 6 of the Greens are up for re-election, including, well, she's our favourite one, Sarah Hanson-Young. There's also Maureen Faruqi from New South Wales, mother of that great journalist Osman Faruqi, and of course Larissa Waters in Queensland. She's also up for election, so they could all get knocked out.
That'd be beautiful.
That'd be a thing of beauty.
Is Larissa Waters the one who was worried about gendered toys?
Yes, no gender December.
Oh, yeah.
Even though somebody pointed out that she looks like a Barbie doll herself.
Now, I think Sarah Hanson-Young needs to get cracking on her social media marketing, because Fraser Anning is catching up very, very fast to the number of likes on Facebook. Of course, they'll wipe him off Facebook as soon as they possibly can.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure about 88% of his likes are from Russian bots. So
of his Anning's.
It's all Russian bots. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, nothing to worry about, folks. There's no rising tide of nationalism. That doesn't explain the 14,000 plus transactions that have been made through the party's membership application process. I don't know if they're all members.
Yeah, we've tried trying to sort of verify that ourselves.
They've gone to ground. It's
they're just busy.
I think they're busy. That tells me that it's actually going to be quite staggering.
Well, I heard today that there's 30 seats in Queensland. They found candidates for 29 of them.
Yeah, that's huge.
Wow.
And I hopefully the one they're not standing in is the seat of Griffith that's in like West End, that's inner city Brisbane there. That's contest between Labor and the Greens.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Can you imagine going door knocking, like as a Fraser Anning candidate in an inner city in Melbourne? Just knock on their door. Hey, hello, I'd like to talk to you about white supremacy.
Yeah, I've come to tell you about the perils of globalism. I don't know why that was in an American accent at all.
Oh, we saw what happened to Martin Hartwig, our reporter in that area. So it's probably best that a Fraser Anning candidate is not there.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, there are some unwinnable areas, but the trick is you just win all the areas around them and surround them, and then crush them.
I like that, the pincer movement.
Yeah,
it'll be the Battle of Cannae all over again. Yeah.
Now, going back to the major parties, Bill Shorten, the Labor leader, hasn't had a good week because journalists have actually been doing their job, asking him hard questions about his policies. There was a Channel 10 reporter, if I just look up his name.
Swine.
No.
Not Swine.
I should have looked up his name.
Swinehound.
Pardon?
Swinehound.
Yeah. But he asked Shorten about his electric car policy, saying, Toyota is going to help roll out electric cars by 2025. What's the cost going to be to the economy? And Shorten just thought he could get away with going to another question. But this journalist sitting around saying, no, you're not answering the question. Why won't you answer the question? He's like, but I want to... I was actually shocked. It's like, wow, he's actually pressing them. Like, this is like, he's broken the modern journalist code, because like Bill Shorten has just gotten away with detail, and then the next day he and Chris Bowen got their tax policy mixed up, and then it disappeared from the party website. So when there's actually proper journalism going on, Labor and Bill Shorten fall to pieces.
Very true. You got to keep in mind that the globalist media don't mind whether they get a socialist globalist or a corporate capitalist globalist. So, yeah, obviously they're going to go hard on Fraser Anning and all that sort of stuff. But if they attack Shorten, that boosts.
Jonathan Lee is the reporter from Network 10, and everyone was surprised that it was, of all people, a Network 10 reporter.
Yeah, they're pretty left. That is surprising. Maybe he's a Greens voter though.
Maybe he just wanted his moment in the sun.
Well, like he's on the because they have all the journalists, the major parties on these campaign buses, so they can control. Like they travel around with them around the country, covering all of their campaign announcements, and they ask questions and that. So the major parties try to control them as much as possible. Apparently, they keep them all in the loop with a WhatsApp chat. That's how. So there's there's
and there'll be little alliances and little
can you imagine
between staffers and journos. There'll be all the underground.
But we were told,
stuff
but apparently that's bad, according to White Rose Society and Alex Mann, when say the XYZ on the Unshackled want to do an interview with Fraser Anning.
Yeah, I can just see like on a late on a Friday night there might be an XYZ article saying that we have seen text messages from the private WhatsApp group. We've seen the metadata, so we can confirm it. There's massive shit posting going on. They're all massive supporters of Stalin and Mao.
and here's a dramatic reenactment now of those messages. With interpretive dance.
I was just thinking of like having a mobile phone and like just putting the main point. Photoshop the main points onto the mobile phone.
I always like to go for the big production. That's just me.
Now, the thing is Shorten's gaffes and that he can't answer questions about policy detail, is this enough to derail his campaign? Because basically, the old rules of campaigning don't apply. If you're of the left and you don't know your policy, you get away with it. It's covered up for you. I mean, there's all this talk about birthday cake moments. John Hewson in 1993 couldn't explain the GST on a birthday cake. But these days, if there's a birthday cake moment, it's covered up in the 24-hour news cycle. They move on to something else. You can get, politicians can get away with not knowing things.
Maybe that's why Bill Shorten thought he could get away with it.
Yeah, he tried to go to the next question.
Yeah, well, he's got people to know things and a structure to uphold. It's a religious institution, the Parliament. We've always got to come back and remember that while we're taught to respect and revere it, it's a satanic religious institution of a bunch of people playing as though they have the moral right to decide how we live our lives. It's a criminal syndicate. And the actual solution, which I think is a ways off still, is not a democratic solution. But we've got to play this game. As long as it's all we've got to play this game and try to put some honest voices into that crowd. But, people who have faith in the Australian Parliament as an institution being the way forward, I think are foolish.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Just on Shorten and Morrison, Shorten is like a very, he's a nasty person.
Oh yeah,
and he's just got that delivery. He always goes. When he speaks, he always rises up to the top.
Yeah,
then he pauses, and then he goes back down again. Yeah. He's not that great. Scott Morrison actually comes along. I reckon he would pass the pub test.
Yeah, he definitely does.
I was saying the other night, I'm never always fully convinced by projections of party preferred voting, because I've scrutinized before and I've seen the way that people just put their preferences whichever way they want them to go.
Yeah, it's been brought up by the activist group Advance Australia. Do you remember in 2012 when Bill Shorten abused an Asian pie shop lady? Do you remember that?
No, it's been lost in the 24-hour news cycle.
Oh, well, he went into one of those milk bars wanting a pie for his son, and the shopkeeper was Asian, and he had trouble understanding her English, and she said, I don't have many hot pies. I can warm one up in the microwave. It'll be a bit soft, like Julia Gillard. And then, you see the...
she should have said, your saggy tits.
Yeah. Port Film Co-op is talking about Bill Shorten's man boobs.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, repeatedly posting.
There cannot be enough discussion of his man boobs.
Yeah, so Bill Shorten is seen on the CCTV, mouthing...
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so she went to the media and said, and like she broke down. She's like, "Oh, you know, yelled at me and like
She
swore."
did mouth off at him, though.
Yeah, and so like Bill Shorten had to go and apologize and said, "I misunderstood her. I thought she said that."
I thought she said that I had like saggy tits.
But she was trying to say, "Oh, she likes Julia Gillard." She was not saying that Julia Gillard was soft. It was just that she said the pies will be a bit soft, and then the next sentence was, "I like Julia Gillard."
Oh.
But he could not understand her
lost
Asian, her Asian accent, so that was a bit racist of Bill Shorten.
Yes, absolutely. You're not
Does
allowed
it
to
count
misunderstand.
as white knighting when you're yelling and throwing your arm in the air up at an Asian woman because she slagged off your female compatriot in the party?
Oh my God.
It's sort of like 4D white knighting or something.
I think we're going to have to consult the PC card deck rule book on that one, actually. Yeah. The part of Bill Shorten's history that always sticks in my mind are certain allegations made in the Pickering Post a few years ago, but I'll leave that off.
The AW, it was to do with the...
Oh, long before the AWU. I'll leave that one off.
Oh, yes, I know. What
you don't want to say? I don't know what you're referring to. Won't you share?
The Pickering Post wrote an article where that he interviewed a woman who claimed that he raped her.
Yes, yeah. So you're being very carefully factual in the way you phrase it. I appreciate that because they're unproven allegations, and obviously we presume innocence until guilt is made sure.
Well,
what is happening in regards to that investigation?
The police, no case to answer.
But it's just been thrown out.
They concluded that there was no evidence to have to press charges.
Yeah, they think it was started by an electrical fire. Just making a Notre Dame reference again.
Yeah.
So Alex Jones can't make those Bill Shorten rape T-shirts he wanted to.
Well, I was going to say, couldn't we just recycle the 2016 US campaign "Bill as a Rapist" placards and distribute them in Australia?
Yes.
Bill is allegedly a rapist.
Yeah, well, we'll see if anyone confronts him in that regard. That would be an interesting press conference.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably time to play out of the Trump handbook and, bring the alleged victims along and put them in the front row at the next debate or something. Just have to play them off. It's exactly what Trump did.
Yep.
Yeah. And it certainly made it awkward. And it made the point without having to say a word about it,
Let's give an update now on stories that we covered last week. Rugby union player Israel Folau, he's been issued with a breach notice for his social media post about sinners who are destined for hell. I'll see if I think it's still. Is it on here?
You mean his quotations from the holy book?
Yeah, here I've got
which
it.
Which is the foundation of our civilization.
So, warning: drunks, homosexuals, adulterers, liars, fornicators, thieves, atheists, idolaters. Hell awaits you. Repent. Only Jesus saves you.
Yeah, them's fighting words in this climate.
Yeah,
can you open it up again? Because I haven't actually. I did see that was the tweet, but I haven't seen his comment, which is those that are living in sin will end up in hell unless you repent. Jesus Christ loves you and is giving you time to turn away from your sin and come to him. And then a quote from Galatians. Yeah. I mean, that's Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah. It's also, as far as Israel Folau is concerned, like he's doing the most loving thing you can possibly do. Because he's someone who genuinely believes in hell. If you genuinely believe in hell, you believe that hell lasts for eternity. So
why would you want to let anyone go there if you can turn them around?
Yeah. So that's what he's doing. He's like, well, there are all these people going to hell, and I have to warn them just so if I can save one or two people, I will have made a difference.
That's the game.
Yeah.
And Yeah, the fallout has been the Australian rugby coaches said, well, regardless, we're not going to select him. His teammates have had enough of him. Rugby League has said, well, we wouldn't welcome him back in our sport. So even though he's the best rugby player across the board, it hasn't saved him. The only sports star who's stuck up for him is Margaret Court. She came out.
She would.
Yes.
She's alt-right too.
I heard she's a Nazi, actually.
Yeah. It's no surprise, but I must say I saw one of his comments, in the furor after the whole thing, that he said, I'll give up. I'll put my faith before football. I'll give up my career if I need to, because this is truth and this is the word of God. And I have utmost respect for that, for him taking that position. And he may not have been cognizant of the immediate and intense fallout that was going to happen by sharing that, but now is his opportunity to pick up his cross. And I guarantee you, if he rides this out gracefully and does not back down and stands by his Lord and Savior and the word of the Bible in this matter, he will turn people to Christianity. It won't be necessarily the people that he thought he would, but people will see that example, and he'll become a hero in their eyes, and they'll want to follow him and find out what he's talking about, and they'll pick up the Bible. And that's the mission. That's the mission of all Christians, is to just speak the truth. Don't back down. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, and let people know that there's a way out of eternal hell.
That's spot on.
Well, compare his unrepentantness with another...
Can I just... something that's been really interesting, I've noticed this argument has been used quite a lot in recent... I've sort of seen it just pop up in recent months. So obviously the memo has gone around. People on the left have been using the expression, freedom of speech does not mean you have freedom from consequences.
Yeah.
It's a really weasel-worded argument. It's basically saying, like, unless we put you in jail or kill you, we have the right to put any kind of punishment on you.
Their fallback is that it's a breach of contract. It's not a free speech issue, because he's breached Rugby Australia's social media policy by bringing the game in to disrepute, code word for upset a sponsor, code word for upset Qantas, code word for upset Alan Joyce.
Code word for freedom of speech was only ever a lie by the left used to subvert and get around blasphemy laws and decency laws in the West as well. Yeah.
And this corporatism that you're pointing to there, it just shows, these powerful organizations, these CEOs who run these powerful organizations, who have heaps of money to throw into the sporting industry or industries, and it's just the money men, the puppet masters behind the scenes, just pushing their agenda. And the truth is, it's like we don't need to spend any time going, it's wrong of them to fire him. Like, they're going to fire him. They always were. There's going to be more such firings, and it's going to continue to degenerate. And it's important that it does happen, and that we see people bravely standing through that process, because what we're going to learn from this is that the rot is spreading to all organizations, and I've been saying it for a while. A lot of people have been saying it, and the evidence is now rolling in that the left are now completely corrupting the sports world, and that has to happen because Australians ultimately won't stand for it. We're a sporting culture, and when they begin to really take our freedom of sportsmanship and freedom of a fair go on the field away from us for all of these political and bullshit reasons, that's when average Australians will start to really wake up to what's going on without having to invest lots of time in educating themselves about politics. They'll see it, they'll viscerally understand, no, these retards are coming to destroy everything we love. So we just got to hope that more people emerge who are going to be truthful and honest, face up to it, live through what they do to him, the public shaming that they're going to put him through, the court of public opinion that will absolutely, flay him. And he just has to pick up his cross and get through it. And when we all see him still standing at the end of it, we'll all realize that they actually don't have power over us, really.
Maddie's just sent through. I'm going to do something unorthodox and put my phone to the camera. If so, can everyone see that? Scott Morrison doing the OK sign. Jomo, confirmed Nazi.
Love it.
Yeah,
That's
Actually, Nazi spelled with 2 E's.
Yeah, that reminds me, there was because they had Q&A in Queensland this week. There was some bearded guy who asked LNP Senator James McGrath a question saying, this is a racist state and your party had fostered it, and brought up that, there's a photo of you with 2 young LNP people who are doing a white supremacist hand symbol. How do you explain that? And like James McGrath was like, they were disciplined for that. And I couldn't believe that this was accepted on Q&A, that these young LNP people were displaying white supremacy. I mean, the latest example.
Wait till they're ridiculing and interrogating politicians because people associated with them have been waving the rainbow flag, which certainly owned. The possession of such flags is going to be repossessed.
Yeah, this was brought up by Paul Joseph Watson, is that the left have fallen for another 4chan troll thinking it's white supremacy all over again. And I was just reminded by that moronic questioner on Q&A. It's like, you endorsed white supremacy!
Classic.
The
memes just keep giving.
Clown world.
Yeah.
Now, compare Israel Folau's heroics to the cucking of the Liberal candidate for Chisholm, Gladys Liu. She's replacing Julia Banks as the Liberal candidate. It's a inner Melbourne seat marginally held by the Liberals. Julia Banks has left the Liberal Party and moved down to Flinders to take on Greg Hunt. She is of a ethnic Chinese background. She speaks with a Chinese accent. There's audio that surfaced from 2016 where she said that the Chinese people, they don't support same-sex marriage, safe schools, and transgender ideology. It's not acceptable in our culture. It's not part of our culture. And now the media have attacked her because of these comments, and her reaction has been to cuck, saying, no, I didn't say that. I was just saying what the Chinese community was saying, and I support equality for all. And she cancelled...
That's not going to impress anyone.
And she cancelled an appearance on Sky News because they wouldn't go soft on her, and now she's in candidate witness protection. I'm not sure if you remember who James Diaz was in 2013.
The Western Sydney guy?
Yeah, who couldn't outline the 6-point plan to stop the boats. So she's turned into that candidate, and it's all of her own making. Like, just because we had a plebiscite where majority of responses were yes, doesn't mean that, you need to cuck and say, no, like, I accept, what we have now. Like, why can't you just stand by your principles?
And there's going to be a large portion of people in the future who did vote yes, who may feel differently. As things change progressing forward, they may go, maybe I shouldn't have voted yes for that. People's minds are going to change as the landscape changes.
And she's also thrown a whole Chinese community under the bus by saying I support equality, but what I reported then, that's the bigoted Chinese.
This is a really, really interesting one. I'm going to go full white nat here. So, because I wasn't even going anywhere near before. So, on one hand, you could say that someone like her is just going under the radar at the moment, because at the moment we are still although white people aren't there's some systematic oppression coming in. The institutions that govern Australia are still essentially white, and the values which currently govern Australia are cuck white. And so they're based on diversity, tolerance, all these communist ideas. In another 10, 20 years' time, if demographics are left unchecked, Australia won't actually be Islamic. Australia will be more Chinese or Indian, or at least like Melbourne and Sydney will. And so
that's a mercy.
yeah. So someone like Lou will be able to like get away with saying what she said before, because then, like as pointed out in a recent Murdoch episode, the Chinese are not going to stand for all this degeneracy. White people are actually going to go from being white men are going to go from being sixth class citizens to second class citizens. But there's an alternative to this. Cultural Marxism, if we can infect the cultures of the people who come here with cultural Marxism, it could actually be one of the things that saves us. If Chinese people worry that if they bring their families to Australia, that their daughters are going to get fat and going to hate them, and that their boys are going to drink soy and just going to sit at home playing computer games all day, then they may not want to come here so much. So this is a case where, well, I don't mind seeing people from other cultures get cultural Marxism, because it actually tells them, hey, the Australia that we thought that we were coming to is not the actual Australia that we have actually come to.
And we've found, this is what I wrote about this week, based on the reaction to Israel Folau and Gladys Liu, the fact that they've been labelled homophobes, their status as racial minorities hasn't saved them. Yeah. And so based on the oppression, hierarchy, what do you call it, the intersectionality, that gays are deemed to be more oppressed than racial minorities in Australia. So, yeah, their racial, different races hasn't saved them from being viciously attacked.
Currently, yeah.
Well, I mean, Asians don't count either because they've got IQ privilege. You know, Asians are basically pretty much in the same basket as white people on that progressive stack. Way too much privilege coming out of East Asia.
Well, it's confusing with the left. Sometimes they claim that Asians are privileged, but then if to suit their arguments, then they say that Asians are oppressed. Because remember, there was that she was writing for one of the American liberal publications, some journalist. And, do you remember it?
Yeah, the one who like had tweeted like again and again and again about killing white people.
Yeah, the Asian one.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I can't remember her name.
Yeah, but she was an oppressed Asian. She was a.
Yeah, she's an Asian who's learnt to play the PC game. Yeah.
It's all very confusing.
Well, isn't it? It's a silly game we play on the right where we sit around and we try to push this mincemeat of crazy through our logic machine and hope that it's going to come out and make some sense on the other end. If we think about it, they don't care. Yeah. They don't care if it makes sense. They don't care about consistency. They don't care about truth. All they care about is power, and all the words that they say that relate to truth and morality and goodness, it's all lip service to the bulk of Australians who actually those things do matter to them. They just don't necessarily have the tools to understand how to vote in their own best interest or how to be part of the movement for our culture to return to something that is true and good. These leftist propagandists don't care if they make sense.
You're spot on there. That brings us right back to the very first thing that we're talking about today. Like when we look at the guys who were members of or are members of Senator Anning's staff brainstorming ideas to provoke the media into giving Senator Anning publicity, those guys get that. Like they understand, okay, this is how the game is played. Let's play them. And so that's something that we as conservatives, as nationalists, as libertarians, as people who are just opposed to this just communist agenda, what are you prepared to do to win?
And those dirty tricks, those dirty campaign tricks of publicity stunts and, trying to deliberately offend people, the left do that all the time. Yeah. But what they do is they do it and then they blame the right for it, these false flag events and these crimes.
Yeah, we talked about the one last week, the noose baby.
Yeah.
Has anything come of that?
Sorry?
Has anything come of that?
No. I've still got it. I've still got it here. I'll bring it up on the screen again.
You'd think if there was more on it, it would have been a really big deal.
Yeah.
They would have. Really
It was
blown this up.
basically in the news for a day. No one's been caught. Otherwise, you know, there would be on the front page of The Guardian, this is the face of racism in Australia.
Maybe people need to just en masse start getting like little white dolls, like little cloth stuffed dolls, and sticking pins in them and just putting them in random places where white people hang out, and then share them on Instagram. Found more voodoo dolls, you know, white hatred, the oppression begins.
That's
just
it.
spread it, you know, because
Fake our own hate crime.
Satire. Yeah, but they do it, you know. And this is the thing: is we try to win on the grounds of truth, but it's an unbeatable enemy when they don't agree. They lie and pretend to agree to truth, but they don't agree to truth.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's an unwinnable battle if it's a battle for truth.
Yeah. There's a short phrase which can sum up what you've just been saying. It's something that we should always keep in mind. Like, because conservatives will always make the argument, facts don't care about your feelings. That's true. But we've always got to remember that their feelings don't care about facts.
Yeah, what does Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez say that...
She says, what happens when you give Cortez an ice cream?
Well, I was actually going to say a real quote of hers that says, it's not important to be factual, it's just important to be moral. That's her famous quote.
Yeah.
There's actually
whence do you derive these morals you speak of?
Yeah, there's actually
shall we discuss that?
There's a satire account of hers, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez press release, and people,
is it all in crayon?
Yeah, people are sharing it as it's real, because there was one tweet in response to the Notre Dame fire, and it said that this is proof that we need action on climate change, and people thought it was real. And I made the argument that no, it's not people sharing fake news. It's just that she says so many stupid things that you just can't tell now.
That's so good. I love that link.
Well, she said she's quit Facebook now and is cutting back on Twitter and Instagram, and that social media is a public health hazard.
Well, she's not as dumb as I thought. Yeah.
It's true. It's certainly true. But it's also a utility and one of the weapons of war at the moment. So, you know, those who want to be in the battlefield know where to go. It's Facebook for now.
Yes.
Let's do another update now. Now, Julian Assange he's going to be extradited to the United States to face hacking charges after he was arrested and evicted from the Ecuadorian embassy in London, as we were going to our last Thursday night. And yeah, pretty much the narrative from the mainstream media is white-haired, bearded guy bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Bad Santa, bad man. Isn't it funny how they've turned around? Because he used to be such a darling of the left when he was exposing the neocon war crimes and all of this, you know, stuff that was happening in the Bush era. He was, and through Obama's time as well, you know. But as soon as the truth, which he was exposing, supported Trump, in various little ways, suddenly now, he must work for Putin, he must work for Trump, he's a right-wing
I do want to pull you up there. I did hear Richard Di Natale say on the Insiders on Sunday that the Australian government needs to help Julian Assange get out of extradition to the United States, saying that he exposed the secrets of government. So, you know, despite the fact that, you know, like, obviously he helped, like, Trump be elected indirectly, Richard Di Natale still has his principles and said he exposed
at least one.
Yeah, he exposed the secrets
in this moment.
he exposed the secrets of government, and that is a social good. So
So not all leftists are turning their back on hashtag not all leftists.
Something I'll never forget is a couple of years ago, Waleed Ali interviewed Julian Assange. And the sneer on Waleed Ali's face, it was pure hatred, like pure hatred. I just saw a clip. I saw it courtesy of I think it was website Altcon, who were an Aussie site for a little while. They just showed a snippet of it. It was really, really interesting. Just you could see it written all over Waleed Ali's face.
And
he's a very hateful man, though. I mean, we know that. Waleed is a very hateful little guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we heard all of the horrible things Assange did in the Ecuadorian embassy.
It's Poogate too.
Yeah, he smeared feces on the walls, and then there's vision of him skateboarding. Apparently, I heard that he killed cats in the embassy and cooked them and ate them. Like I heard he did all this horrible stuff, and I was told by CNN, so it must be true.
I heard he picks his nose and eats it.
Yeah. Definitely all true.
Yeah.
Well, I heard he just refused to wash his own bathroom and treated the Ecuadorian embassy as a hotel service. So that's slightly more plausible than the other claims.
Yeah.
Though that said, being cooped up for 8 years, was it, or 7 years, something like that? Being cooped up in 1 or 2 rooms, and not being vitamin D deficient, it wouldn't surprise me at all if a guy like Assange had some moments of madness, for sure.
Something more serious, he's been accused of sort of meeting with other hackers and sort of using the Ecuadorian embassy as a base to basically tell other hackers what to do. There's another hacker, I think a Swedish guy, who's been arrested just recently. So they've actually brought something a little more substantial against him. But he's gone from being the hero of the left to the hate symbol.
Well,
that's what I find really interesting.
Trump's now saying, I know nothing about Assange, even though he said in the campaign, I love WikiLeaks. And basically the neocons, Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, the VP, have basically said Assange is in our custody now. We're going to do with him as we please. And, Trump's not going to get in the way.
Yeah, right. So, yeah. Well, we shall see how it plays out, and I would hope that, given they've raised these charges of hacking, and sure he may have committed crimes, but again, it's what interests me is the symbols and their broader ramifications, and Assange is a very powerful living symbol for our times of that need to expose the truth and that need to have transparency. And since he started splashing onto the scene and people became aware of more of the things that were going on behind closed doors and in secret, people have started demanding more transparency and not getting it for years and years now, not really getting any more transparency. And so we've gone, all right, well, you're not going to, you elitists are not going to give it to us, so we'll take it. The natural consequence is more, leaks and that sort of thing, and the crime that Assange is most famous for, which is technically not a crime, I believe, but what he's most famous for is publishing Bradley Manning's documents.
Chelsea Manning.
Well, he was Bradley Manning at the time that he committed the crime, and so he leaked the documents. That was a crime. That was actually the treasonous act against the U.S. government that may have endangered lives. Right, and WikiLeaks just performed its function as a publisher and published it. Now, Bradley Manning, at this point in the story, Chelsea Manning is pardoned, or is what do they call it?
Commuted. The sentence was
commuted. The sentence was commuted.
But she is back in prison now for not testifying before the grand jury on the Assange indictment.
Right. Okay. Well.
So Assange is a big fish then.
Sorry?
Assange is the big fish then. He's the one they want. So
yeah,
you're saying,
it'd be interesting. So just that Obama's involvement in that, because it was Obama who commuted the sentence, wasn't it, for Chelsea Manning?
Yes, one of his last acts as president. Yeah.
Trump has the power to to intervene here and properly hold Julian Assange up as a very weird kind of hero. He's not a heroic looking or sounding guy. He's a weird, awkward Australian hacker. But what he's done is so powerful, and what he represents to people is putting truth above all else. And if they tear that symbol down, if Trump allows it to happen, it's going to really, really seriously, destroy whatever confidence is left in Trump, I think.
It's a really interesting one because I think it was, I can't remember. Something that's been said about the communist system is that one of its key tactics to just dehumanize people and just humiliate them, to just break them, was to get them to say things that they knew weren't true.
Yeah.
And so, as you say, like, what could be more symbolic than Trump having to let his own people put in prison the guy who, like, is the key guy to getting him elected. Like, that would be the ultimate symbol of breaking Trump. I haven't said a great deal on it, but like, my take is that Trump is, like, yes, he's the president of the United States, but he doesn't actually run the United States. I don't necessarily go along with the whole Q thing, but he's one guy. Yes, he's in the most powerful position, but he's up against not just up against an entire system of laws, but an entire system that's dedicated to stopping him. So yeah, and when I wear my tinfoil hat, like, he knows how much he can do without getting suicided as well, and that goes for his family too. So yeah, there's only so much that Donald Trump can do, but yeah, this is them trying to make him put one of the most important people to him in prison. To destroy him. Yeah.
And his hands will be tied, really, by the fact that there is that connection to Assange's actions and the success of the Trump campaign, even though it's all founded on the exposure of truth. So it shouldn't be an issue. And if everyone's stories line up and it's the truth and people then elect a leader based on that, it's not a conspiracy, it's just reality happening. Right, but people, the establishment will, if Trump intervenes, the establishment will paint it as corruption.
Yes.
And either way, clown world escalates. It just keeps going. This has been a big year.
We've got time to squeeze in one more news update, and while Julian Assange looks destined for America, Avi Yemeni is back in Melbourne from America after he was denied entry to the United States. He planned to confront Comedy Central's Jim Jeffries over his manipulative interview with Avi Yemeni that he secretly recorded and exposed Jim Jeffries making anti-Islam jokes. And now he and Sydney Watson, who's a dual Australian-American citizen, they arrived at LA airport.
So that's why she talks funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Cool.
And you should totally ask her about that in the comments on her videos as often as possible.
That's why she wasn't deported as well, because, well, she's got citizenship.
Yeah.
Okay. But she still got interrogated along with Avi by the FBI. Comedy Central made like a complaint because apparently...
I like how you said FBI and Comedy Central in the same sentence.
Yeah, they thought that... they thought that Avi was going to burst into Comedy Central with like a military-style weapon, and I don't know.
I heard that, like, when he was being questioned, he was like, "But I'm your greatest ally."
And so he said, Avi, that his only weapon was his camera and mic, and like the FBI people were reasonable and like, oh yeah, we'll say customs that you're cool, but they noticed that because he applied for a visa waiver, that on closer scrutiny he'd said that he'd never previously been denied a visa, which he had been around 15 years ago, and so he was deported on that. Yeah, so
he lied.
Yeah, well, it sort of reminds me of like when Lisa Simpson is disqualified from the beauty contest because Homer Simpson wrote in the "Do not write in this space." Okay. So he was deported on a technicality, which by the letter of the law is correct. So he's going to apply for a new visa, and we'll see what the outcome of that is, and if there is any sort of interference from a certain, I wouldn't say comedy network, I'd say preach network.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing them.
Did Jim Jeffries ever comment on the whole thing?
No, he pretended it didn't happen. Because remember, if it doesn't happen in the mainstream media, it doesn't happen. Just like don't mention the Unshackled or the XYZ. Don't mention RV Yemeni or TR.news.
And Jim would have been straight on the phone to his LA agent. He's like, "Oh, mate, you can't let this get into the mainstream, man. Like, it's going to really screw me. Oh, don't worry, Harvey, we won't let it happen." And not Harvey, you know what I mean, Jeffrey, Jim. They just let it disappear. But this is the great thing that I'm seeing in Australia anyway, is just how much, we talk about. Sometimes it's hard to be sure of how much of a movement there is against how woke is Australia against the mainstream media and all their tactics, and you just like Fraser Anning's moments in the mainstream media have been so telling, because the comment sections are just always support for him and ridicule of the MSM. So people are really waking up, and now it's funny. It's really funny that Jim Jeffries and his ilk think that if it's not in the mainstream media, they can get away with it. It's so laughable that they believe that that's how the world still works. It just does, but it's slipping away very quickly.
I've come up with a new term, and like, how there's unpersoning, there's unnews. News didn't happen.
Yeah, unnews. Yeah, it's good. Hashtag it. Make it a shirt.
All right, I think we're around bang on time. So, as always, it's been a great show. We discussed a lot, and thank you to everyone who interacted in the chat. The chat is half the fun. You might see me laugh randomly throughout the show. That's because one of you has put through a funny comment. A lot of the time, it's comments that I won't admit that I laughed at. So...
There's been a whole lot of honking tonight as well.
Yes. Honkly Honkler has been a quite prominent there.
A faithful honker.
Thank you, David, for joining me as always, and thank you to you, James, for being here tonight and contributing. Make sure that, the XYZ is back up. You checked your email?
Yeah, I checked my email. To be honest, I just wanted a couple of days off to play GTA.
Yeah. I'm gonna just send you an email over the next few days saying I'm from the Overlord internet company. We're gonna pull the plug unless you pay these bitcoins.
I'll probably ignore it.
He gets a few of those a day.
I was gonna prank Maddie on April Fool's Day, pretending to be from Specsavers legal department, giving him a cease and desist letter.
And SD is pointing out in the chats before we sign off that we did forget to say thanks to ASIO for watching. We love you guys. Keep up the good work. It's probably a waste of your resources hanging here with us, but it's good to have you nonetheless.
Yeah. We hope we're
and Cuck of the Week was Gladys Liu. It was a woman this week, so first woman to win the Cuck of the Week. So well done.
Yeah, she's a pioneer.
And make sure that you subscribe to the Rational Rise channel. There's not the daily fox hunt going on at the moment, but you've still got your meme craft show on a Tuesday and your Vox Day versus Jordan Peterson Wednesday, and of course Foxy's Fridays.
Yep, that's right. So at least 3 live streams happening a week at the moment, but we'll be kicking back into full gear pretty soon. I'm streaming to you guys tonight from my new hardware, so that's the game changer now in the studio.
Awesome. Well, hope everyone has a good Easter. We'll be back, it'll be Anzac Day, our next Uncuckables, which will obviously be a special day, so hope that you can join us then. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get notified when we go live, so you can tune in from the beginning. Have a good Easter, and we'll see you next week.
Happy Easter, everybody.
See you guys.
The Uncuckables.